Is this thing on? Let's assume it is. So I wanted to talk about the first decision that will be on Andy Burnham's desk when he changes from Prime Minister in waiting to being in number 10 or number 10 North, whichever one he's going to be. And I think there's a version of this decision on every business leader's desk, certainly ones that have already made forays and investments into AI. So 2022, Andy Burnham said, technology for technology's sake doesn't change lives. And I agree. And if I had an audience with him, hi Andy, if you're watching, I would say it comes down to three things, right? So firstly, AI is an ingredient. It's not a meal. You eat too much, you might get indigestion. Secondly, it's if you're working with vendors, and tech bros often talk about moats, it's not a moat, it's a siege for you as the buyer. So beware. And thirdly, edge cases, they are the business of government. Government is not about vanilla, it's about everything, all of the other ice cream flavors, right? And so I don't think you can take a kind of treat government like a business approach. So before I go on, let's just check. I'm staying in my lane. So if we think of AI as a three-layer cake, right? The bottom layer is infrastructure. So it's chips and data centers and the energy that needs to supply them, right? And that's very much in the lane for growth in every postcode and those initiatives that Burnham's driving. Then you've got a layer on top, which is all about models. So Opus 4.8 or Mythos or Fable that Anthropic produced and then got export controls by the US government. So it's fair to say UK and EU are behind in that models piece. There's already investment going into sovereign AI in the UK, but maybe it's not enough. But that's for Andy to talk to the National Cybersecurity Centre and the Ministry of Defence and look at that security aspect. So the bit I'm interested in is the bit that sits on top of that, you could call software, I'm going to call it functionality. So this is how we are using and integrating AI into our tools. And the job here around that functionality is not to win an AI race. And so we don't need to stand up some sort of other institute. We don't need civil servants to go away and write another another strategy paper. We don't need to rock up to the future site of a data center that's actually a scaffolding yard. We need to be using this technology to solve the hard challenges in the machinery of the state. And I'm specifically saying the hard challenges rather than sprinkling AI everywhere, which is comparatively an easy thing to do. So that AI, it's not about paperwork, it's about outcomes. It's about improving the outcomes from the machinery of government. It's also around refusing the siege of these handful of vendors that I'll come and talk about. And none of that requires Andy Burnham to become a technologist. He doesn't have to take technology lessons like previous prime ministers. He just needs to trust the instincts he already has and apply them in this new circumstance. Bearing in mind, AI is an ingredient, not a meal. And so if we're going to have a country that's wired to work for ordinary people rather than against them, AI is an ingredient in that. Okay. So when we see stuff that is an AI opportunities action plan and it's named after the technology, that might be all right for a bit to get things started, but actually we don't want these things to be AI things. We want them to disappear into the background, and we want to see that an outcome has improved, right? So a waiting list got shorter, more benefits paid correctly, a planning decision is shorter, weeks rather than years. So it's not about AI dashboards, it's about people describing better outcomes and AI somewhere behind the scenes, right? And it's hard, right? It's hard, but that is the job. So the easy thing is giving every civil servant a co-pilot license or paying a big four consultancy £4 million to build an AI skills hub that is just shipping like a directory of other people's courses, some of which aren't even free. If you're announcing AI for everyone, you're like Oprah. You get a chatbot, you get a chatbot, everybody gets a chatbot. But being surrounded by AI isn't the same as getting these outcomes, right? And the hard part is to direct this technology at the problems the country really cares about. So if you're a business, I would always say, like, pick a problem you really care about. It's the same here. This AI, it matters that it's applied to the problems that the country really cares about. And here's the thing, right? Most of these challenges are messy, difficult problems. Which brings me on to the next thing, which is, I said, edge cases are the business of government. So what did I mean? So if you're a company, you can choose your customers, you can choose a segment of customers, and you can think, I'm going to serve the profitable customers, the middle of the market. I'm going to decline everybody else. Government can't do that. It's obliged to serve the whole population. But more than that, the people that need help from government are people with the complex situations, right? Edge cases are not like a rounding error in the market that you can ignore like a business. Edge cases are the business of government. And so treating government like a business deploying technology, it has some properties that are different. The other thing to bear in mind is these generative AI tools, they're not reasoning, right? They're making predictions based on their training data. So in the case of a large language model, they're predicting the next word. And they're most accurate where their training data is densest, the well-trodden middle. Out at the fringes, where the data's a bit inconsistent or spotty, an unusual medical presentation, complicated housing case, you can find that if you're using a general model, it can be, frankly, a little bit bullshitty. Worse still, it's giving you its bullshitty answer with exactly the same confidence that it gives you its right answer. Okay, when we used to have software that was algorithmic, it broke, right? That's how it failed. Whereas AI fails when it agrees with you. It gives you a plausible but wrong answer. And then a person has to figure out, where is it just being plausible and where is it correct? And the risk here is that these models may or may not be at their weakest where they could be the most destructive to a vulnerable person's life, right? So a confidently wrong decision about someone's benefit, someone's care, someone's immigration status isn't an admin error. It's not a statistic. It's a failure of statecraft, right? So yes, we do have institutions, although our AI Safety Institute has just been renamed the AI Security Institute, and algorithmic bias and ethics is no longer its remit. Its remit is national security, so myths, models, and things like that I mentioned. The AI assurance market is really nascent at the moment, and there's a real risk that it becomes a conformance market. So, where the right process is followed, whereas what we really care about is assuring for outcomes, right? Does this system behave fairly in the decision that affects someone's life? Now, we can make an assurance market and we can handle this, but it's a conscious choice, right? And to be fair to government, there is some work already happening on assurance. But we need to be really, really careful that it's assuring outcomes, not assuring box ticking and conformance. So think, is this fair to the person on receiving end? Not, did we follow a framework? Okay. So scrutiny needed. So let me go back to that thing that I said about vendor capture. It's not a moat, it's a siege. So if you're Burnham and you put your career on saying London extracts and the regions get left kind of holding the bill somehow, we can see the same dynamic playing out between large technology vendors and the British state. I also see it playing out between large technology vendors and business, actually. So one company embeds itself deep enough into some critical infrastructure or a critical system that swapping it out then becomes unthinkable. So this moat now becomes a siege. It's very, very difficult to extricate your business or your public services from that siege of technology. It's expensive and it's difficult to escape. And your institution has basically been captured by a vendor. So the decision that's sitting or will be sitting on Andy Burnham's desk is the Palantir contract for the NHS, federated data platform, right? It's over £300 million, and there's a break clause that's March next year. So the Department of Health needs to decide whether to extend it or whether to let it lapse. There is mixed feedback. So some users have been reported as saying it's awful to use. Some NHS trusts say that their existing systems are better than this provided by Palantir. And I'm not having a pop particularly at Palantir here. It's more the most visible kind of first decision of its kind. There is a lack of independent advisors sitting out in the market. A lot of the commentary about AI actually comes from technology vendors rather than independence. A lot of the discussions of government are with technology vendors rather than independent advisors. So it's a siege. It's got a date attached and there's a decision to be made. And I can tell you, this isn't the only decision across our regulated sectors. And there will be, if you're a business leader, there will be a version of this on your desk. If you've made inroads, how do you know that you can swap between vendors, between models? How can you assure your supply chain around the decisions that are being automated in your business. And if you're going to take away one thing from today, I would go and ask the questions around whether you have this scenario in your business yet and what you're going to do about it. On a similar vein, around tech voices being the main ones in the room, I think the same is true with this story about the future of work. The dominant story about the future of work around AI is a fatalistic one. The machines are going to arrive, jobs are going to go, the rest of us need to brace for impact and plan for this. And kind of a nice story if you're leading a large tech firm, because if the outcome's inevitable, then no one has to answer for it and no one's to blame, right? But the Pope already came out. Pope. I've never talked about the Pope so much in my life. The Pope came out and said that AI is not neutral. It's taking on the character of the people that finance and control it. Its gains mustn't be concentrated in a few hands. So think back around Manchesterism versus Westminster orientated. And so it mustn't be in a few rich hands when everyone else is shut out, right? And I agree with this. And there is a matter of choice about how AI shapes working lives. The government has far more agency over it than it's chosen to use yet. I mean, it's early days, but we need to start thinking about, are the gains shared? Are they hoarded? The decision that the UK government has around copyrighted works that have been used to train AI is an example of this. How people are trained up into jobs and careers. These are all political decisions. They're not the outputs of a model. So this is right in Burnham's Lane, right? If you want to remove regional inequality, you also want to remove the inequality that continues to be triggered by a London-centric AI industry. Citizens only are going to be victims of the technology if their government lets them. Okay. So what am I advocating for? Let's get tangible. It's debate and design rather than this fatalistic acceptance. Right. So, Andy, if you've borne with me for 17 minutes or anyone else, let's have a quick recap, right? So technology for technology's sake doesn't change people's lives. I agree. So what do we need to do? We need to think of AI as an ingredient, not a meal, and be solving those hard problems of public services with AI in the background as an ingredient in those solutions. We need to think that edge cases are the business of government. The complicated needs that people have when they come to the state, they're not edge cases. They are the core business of what government does. And so we can't take a kind of business approach to this. You can't choose your customers. You've got all of the citizens, and the ones with the most complex requirements are the ones that need you. And finally, it's not a moat, it's a siege, and we must resist being captured by vendors, right? We want to have the choice to use the best technology that's available to serve our business in the moment. We want to be able to port our data. That doesn't mean we won't stick with a supplier if they're the ones that have the best functionality, have the best collaboration. But we don't want to be captured in a way that gives us no choice. So, what am I advocating for? Andy Burnham needs to use his instincts and incorporate AI into that world not be dragged in down a road where there's some special AI lever that needs to be pulled. Let me know if you disagree. What have I missed? Give me some love in the comments. And if you want to get this sort of thinking first, I've got a newsletter. It's called The Hard Part, because the hard part of technology is not the technology itself, it's changing the way people work. So link is in my bio, and I'll see you on the next one.